President Eisenhower signed a proclamation. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read a part of it that I think is the most pointed part. It says, "Now therefore I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States of America, do hereby call upon all of our citizens to observe Thursday, November 11, 1954, as Veterans Day. On that day, let us solemnly remember the sacrifices of all those who fought so valiantly on the seas, in the air, and on the foreign shores to preserve our heritage of freedom, and let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting and enduring peace, so that their efforts shall not have been in vain." He goes on to say something that I think is also important. "In order to ensure proper and widespread observance of this anniversary, all veterans organizations, and the entire citizenry will wish to join hands in this common purpose." That's what we're here for, that's what we're doing, and that's what we're trying to do. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
I want to give an apology to start here. Many of you were led to believe that this meeting was going to be held at Traditions Cafe. That was never the intention, and I'm sorry for misleading you. However, we had reason to believe that if we had announced this meeting here too far in advance, people might have not wanted that meeting to happen. And that's a really significant and profound comment on the state of our democracy, where we have to be worried about whether or not public servants will allow members of the public to access public buildings. We are here because for the last 5 years, we have watched our country deliberately squander its future with an illegal, immoral war that as of today has taken the lives of over 3,800 American soldiers, over 1 million Iraqi civilians, has created over 6 million refugees, has cost this country over $650 billion. We're here because the overwhelming majority of this country spoke last year and said, we want an end to this, and we elected representatives that were supposed to bring it to an end and told us they would. And what have those representatives done? Nothing! In the context of that, members of this community came together to say it's time to end our community's complicity in this tragedy, and to do so by shutting down the military's use of our public port. Resistance started 2 years ago. In May of 2006, the 3rd Stryker Brigade deployed out of the port of Olympia for a tour of duty in Mosul, Iraq. Many of the people in this room and others tried desperately to prevent that deployment. Many people risked arrest and civil disobedience in doing that. Nevertheless, it left. And last week, it came back, sort of. 48 members of the 3rd Brigade didn't come back. They were killed in Iraq. We have no idea how many Iraqi civilians were killed as a result of that deployment. So last week, the citizens of this community said, you can't send it and you can't bring it back. People began to engage in a time-honored tradition of peaceful, non-violent civil disobedience to prevent the movement of this equipment. Unfortunately, their peaceful, non-violent actions were met with police brutality. The war abroad has become the war at home, and it's being waged against every one of us, our friends, and our neighbors. That's why we're here.
The police did pepper spray me very, very close in my face. Multiple times. They made sure to go to diagonal movements, so they got lots and lots of it on me. At this point, you can see this on the YouTube videos, I shouted for a medic. I could not get one because the police would not let the medics come. I ended up having to run away from the fence because I needed some serious attention. And I could still feel the pepper spray like coming at me. I ended up having an allergic reaction. I didn't know I was allergic to pepper spray. I'm very allergic. And I needed continuous medical treatment. I know it was reported that there was no serious injuries. I was very seriously injured. I don't know what I would have done if there were no street medics. The fact that the police would not let street medics come and help me is just completely malicious on their part. I don't think they should be people that should have weapons. They're extremely violent, and the fact that they will not let us get help is just really atrocious. That's all I want to say.
My name's Larry Mosqueda, and I teach at the Evergreen State College. And I think one of the things is that we don't have to sort of justify the war is no longer good. It's been 5 years since the war started. Trying to justify the war 5 years after the war started is like the Germans trying to justify the war in Nuremberg. And this is actually the 5 years later, it's about the time that the Nuremberg trial started. So this should be the beginnings of the people's type of Nuremberg. Some of the trucks were coming through, and some people stepped out in front of the trucks at the intersection, and so a lot of police ran over there. And some of the police who didn't run were still in front of me, and some young woman next to me actually ran into the street, and the police took their baton. One of the police took his baton and smashed her, in the chest right here, and pushed her to the ground, and right in front of me. So I reached down to help pick her up because the police started to kick her. They were kicking her back to the curb. And I didn't know who she was, but I found out her name now was Janet, and I'll testify to this on the road when the trial comes up. But they're kicking her, tried it back to the curb. So I reached down to pick her up, and that's when the police sprayed me directly in the face, about 1 foot away, with their pepper spray. I've been to a lot of different places, El Salvador, with CISPAS, to Nicaragua, to Seattle, WTO. I was in Chicago in '68, but the police here used to have a pretty good reputation, relatively speaking. They're better than the police in Chicago. That's what I always tell people. But they're becoming like the police in Chicago. They're much worse than the police were in Seattle and WTO, because I spent 3 days there, and they're much worse the last 2 days than the police were in Seattle. And I'm no fan of the Seattle police. I think we should try to encourage all the people we know in different port cities like Oakland, Los Angeles, Long Beach, New York, Houston, other places where the military ships out of, because what we're doing is actually important. Yeah. But we actually need to sort of make sure that the bigger cities actually sort of step up and stop the ships from coming in and from going out.
I knew I was in trouble, so I moved from that position, and then a truck came through, and I went out into the street. I was standing in the street, and one of those 3 cops came to me, did not give me a warning to move, slammed me in the chest with his baton, was saying, "Do you want more?" I said, "Stop." He slammed my partner, who was standing with me, in his back as my partner was trying to leave. As we moved onto the sidewalk, I saw the same cop grab a woman by her breast. She screamed and tried to move. He slammed her in her breast with his baton and threw her back onto the sidewalk. We crossed back onto the street. I saw a woman sitting on the sidewalk crying. A cop was kicking her. I saw a man that I identified as a teacher come to help her, and the cop pepper sprayed him. And the message was really clear. It was that you will not stand up to us, you do not have a voice, you will not be heard, you will not be seen, you are invisible. Gay people have no voice.